Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. Of course, today marks the passing of Neil Armstrong, one of the most enigmatic characters involved in the Apollo 11 moon landing, which, as you know from this and my radio show, and of course from your own research, probably there's a great deal of controversy surrounding the Apollo program, and there is the ever-present question as to whether or not we actually went to the moon, and if Neil Armstrong actually did so. Now, one thing that can be said about Neil Armstrong is that he remained relatively reclusive throughout his life after the Apollo program and his involvement in it, rarely granting interviews and rarely making himself seen in public. The few times that he did talk about his experiences on Apollo 11 left somewhat to be desired, the answers that he gave. So there are certainly questions to ponder about this, but one thing is certain, whether Neil Armstrong went to the moon or not, he certainly was a very interesting character in America's history, and he deserves to be remembered as somebody that was very involved in experimental aviation and in the flight of, for example, like the X-15 rocket plane and some other things, and certainly had a very long career. And in light of his passing, I think it's a good time to reflect on what we know and what we think we know about the exploration of the moon and the Apollo missions. And certainly there's a lot of questions about the photography and the film footage that was taken, and of course the actions of the astronauts after they had visited the moon, supposedly. Quite disturbing in some cases, with them unable to recall with any kind of clarity exactly the circumstances under which they were there, and to relate the experience of being on another world, and generally a lot of them seeming to be quite disturbed in some ways. So I think it's a good time right now to maybe remember Neil Armstrong as being a quote-unquote American hero, but at the same time to reflect back and realize that maybe we don't know a lot of what we think we know, and question things, because it's always good to ask questions. I'd also like to comment on the Empire State shooting and the Empire State Building shooting. And let me point out that, of course, you have the emperor up there, Mayor Bloomberg, who likes to rule by fiat and thinks he has the answers to everything that he's going to shove down your throat, whether you like it or not. And he's one of the biggest proponents of massive new gun legislation. Now, you know, when it comes to the idea of gun control and things of this nature, I'm not opposed to people having these discussions and trying to understand, you know, what can be done to solve the idea of gun violence per se. I do not think restricting people's access to firearms is the answer, because quite frankly, when someone's disturbed, they'll find a way to injure you or kill you, whether they have a gun or not. A gun may make it easier in some cases. So draconian new gun laws are not necessary. It is only a matter of applying the laws that are on the books right now, and there are plenty of laws that would address these issues. The contention that I have is that perhaps these laws are deliberately being ignored so that it will appear to be a massive crisis. And of course, the only alternative in that vein is something I've talked about before, and that is the idea that the fear factor when it comes to gun violence promotes more gun sales, which then feeds into the industry itself. So all of this plays into the hands of the gun lobby and the military-industrial complex. So they ramp up the fear on purpose, driving up gun sales, increasing their profits, and it's all at your expense. They feed on you. They prey on you. Now, Bloomberg, very famously coming out and talking about the actions in Colorado, at the tragedy in Aurora, and other places around the country to call for stricter gun control laws. And of course, we'll hear the same refrain from him again in light of the Empire State Building shooting. But will we hear anything about the reckless disregard for other people's lives that was on blatant display in New York when everybody else who was injured, besides the gunman who was killed and his presumable victim, was injured by police gunfire? Every other person involved in that shooting was shot by a policeman. Now, are we going to have a conversation about the rampant abuse of police in this country and their continued efforts to toe the party line when it comes to supporting the corporate oligarchy at the expense of everybody else? Will we sit down at a table and have a discussion about the overreaction of police, about their tendency to move to violence, about their tendency to engage in pepper spraying and tasing when it's completely unnecessary, about their abusive arrests, about their beating of suspects, and etc.? Are we going to have this discussion as well, Mr. Bloomberg? Because it's about time we did. Now, I need to make it clear, of course, there are many police officers who are very good at what they do and they take their job very seriously. And they're not out there to toe the oligarchy's party line on a personal basis, but the police forces around the country have been made to be this. They are the enforcers of the corporate elite. Anything that threatens that corporate elite and its profit-making potential will be dealt with in the harshest manner possible. So, let me reiterate again what I have said before when it comes to the police. Realize that when you, Mr. Police Officer, are out there pepper spraying someone who is peacefully demonstrating and exercising his free speech in protesting against whatever egregious action is coming down upon him, that when you decide to pepper spray that person for no reason, or tase them 25 times for no reason, or beat the living shit out of somebody when you try to take them into custody for breaking some ridiculous no law, you need to really reflect on the fact that your jobs, your pensions, your salary, everything that you rely upon for your life is on the chopping block. Just like everybody else who has had their head lopped off by this system. You do not hold a special position. You are not needed. We are already seeing the privatization of police forces in various places around this country. Do you think it is going to stop there? Do you think that you, sir, are going to escape the privatization, the corporatization, and the corporate oligarchy, and your eventual serfdom? So, you need to reflect on the fact that at some point you may be out on the streets protesting because your jobs have been eliminated, because your pension funds have been robbed and raided by the corporate oligarchy to fatten the pockets of the rich. You may be on the street talking about you're not having a job, and you're not having a house, and you're not having a future. And you may be protesting the egregious actions of something else, perhaps even the private security force that has taken your place at a much greatly reduced salary with no pension and no benefits. So I would urge everyone who is a police officer to think twice before you engage in the brutal actions of some of your members whenever you are towing the party line of the corporate oligarchy in this country. There is no reason in my mind that all of these people should have ended up wounded by police gunfire, except for the fact that the police seem to be, in this case, and in a lot of cases, prone to react with violence before it's necessary, or before they have taken all the steps necessary to make sure that it is justified and done in the proper manner. And that is a problem that is endemic within the system. And if we're going to talk about gun control, as King Bloomberg wants to engage in, then don't you think it's about time we sit down and talk about police brutality? And for that matter, how about stop and frisk again, which is a blatant violation of people's rights? Right in your face. I'm just stopping you because you're black, or maybe you're Latino. And every once in a while I might stop a white guy just so you can't say it's all just black people. The token whites in the system. Because everybody knows that all the black people walking on the street are carrying guns or something else because they're all violent. Well, of course that's not true, but that's the stereotype that they're painting now, isn't it? So maybe some people of color who are in the police departments around the country might want to think twice about engaging in these types of activities, because you are only promoting a stereotype that is damaging to your racial group. It is a farce and a travesty. Please think twice before you engage in the brutal activities of some of your fellows. And if you're going to pull your gun, make sure you're using it for the right reasons and you use it in the proper manner. And let's not end up with 8 or 9 people shot by police who have done absolutely nothing wrong, but be innocent bystanders to a terrible tragedy. Thank you. Good day.